I'm Andrew, and this is a sunflower. I got this down the street for $5.18. Ironically, G-Tech grows thousands of these on blighted, contaminated, and vacant lands in Pittsburgh and New Orleans. We do this because sunflowers have the ability to extract toxins out of the soil into the stalk. They produce an oil seed as feedstock for biofuel, and they serve as a platform for the clean energy American jobs that Jackie Roberts was talking about yesterday. But what's compelling about all these elements and what brings them together into such a flavorful package is where we do it. These are the places that serve as holes in the fabric of community. These are the places that attract trash and piles of tires and criminal activity. These are the places that are saturated with pollution and are the definition of hopeless. And so, what I'd like to actually talk to you about today is the idea of value creation. And what I mean by value creation, I mean not just generating energy and revenue. What I mean is tapping into the latent potential of places. This is a photo of someone's former front doorstep in New Orleans. And behind it is a vacant lot where their house used to be. There's 12 square miles of sites exactly like this, back to back in New Orleans. And while not all places have such issues on such scale, many places struggle with the same types of issues. And while it's important to acknowledge the legacy of catastrophe, what's also important to think about is how do we start creating value from places like this? As a real quick temperature check, how many folks in the room are from Pittsburgh or have been through Pittsburgh, spent time in Rust Belt cities? Wow, actually a fair amount of you, all right? So folks may be familiar with this because these are the places that have been hit hardest by industrial decline in the last 60 years. They have shrinking populations, escalating poverty, astounding rates of unemployment and dropout, abundance of environmental degradation, all concentrated in the poorest neighborhoods. This is a map of the city of Pittsburgh, and all that blue that you see, that's all vacant, blighted land. It's about 25,000 vacant lots in the city proper. About 15% of the city landmass, that's equivalent to about 7 Central Parks worth of land. Now, in the real estate industry, they call that a crap load of land. And we generated this map as students at Carnegie Mellon when we were looking at the issues of vacancy. And we found a couple other interesting truths. One, green space adds value. We all want to live near a park or a garden. Two, adding green space has some issues. It's difficult. There are constraints. It costs money, soil is polluted, and frankly, poor people want jobs, not gardens. But we also found that investments in adding green space create an upward spiral of ownership, community health, and even employment. And so what we really started thinking about was how do we create ownership, right? The problem with so much vacancy is that no one owns the problem. So how do we create ownership in a meaningful way? Enthralled by the idea of growing sunflowers, biofuel crops on vacant land, we got the opportunity to try it out on the city's largest remaining industrial site, a former steel mill. 178 acres of lunarscape. And when I say lunarscape, I mean the landscape most resembles another planet. Researchers from Carnegie Mellon do their robotic research on this site because it's so void of vegetation. This is where we got the opportunity to try our idea out by hand. And so I can tell you, as a graduate student at Carnegie Mellon, the very last thing I thought I'd find myself doing in graduate school would be farming a brownfield by hand. Nonetheless, it worked, and it was inspiring. I can't tell you how beautiful it is to see 6 acres of sunflowers in the backdrop of a former steel mill. And since that time, we've been successful in replicating our work throughout Pennsylvania. We've started to work in New Orleans, and we're looking at growth in other places. What I'd like to do is get back to the idea of value creation. We know that we can add value by improving places, right? In the upper corner, we have a city block of a former housing authority site, public housing site. 5 years later, bursting with sunflowers. We know that we can add value by creating opportunities for young people. We know that we can connect them to emerging industries and create platforms for education and training. However, we think that we start creating value when we transition space into community ownership. Same Sunflower Block now is a community-owned and operated community garden where they produce food for one of the city's poorest neighborhoods. This seems to be the trend with our work, and this is what we're trying to grow. But we also know that we can produce very tangible value in the forms of products and services. We make compost. We're now making biodiesel. We produce sunflower seed packets, and we sell them at Whole Foods. In fact, you can grab some in the bookstore on your way out. But what I'd like to do with this, the world's largest sunflower, is talk to you about what it means to be a social entrepreneur, because that's a little bit of what I'm supposed to talk about today. Because to be a social entrepreneur, there's a significant degree of scrappiness. And what I mean by scrappy is that fundamentally, as social entrepreneurs, we have multiple bottom lines to meet: economic, social, and environmental. And so juggling just one of these ideas as far as making value is a significant task of being a social entrepreneur. And the idea of creating value is the bottom line ultimately for us. It's just one of the pies that we have to juggle. But I also want to talk about the value of taking action. Ideas into action has been incredibly personally empowering for me. And I firmly believe that those that listen and inquire, apply creativity and generosity, and take action are those that change the world. And I'm so grateful to be here and to share our story, because taking action, applying creativity has defined myself and my career, and I'm grateful to be here with you and talking about it. And so I urge you, as you stop on your way out to smell the roses, to remember that you can apply ideas, you can take action, and we can come together to create value in the least likely places. Thanks so much for the time. I look forward to chatting with you more.